All right, big 49ers update this morning. Liam Coen, who was scheduled for his second interview with the Jacksonville Jaguars for their head coaching position today, has turned down Jacksonville, and he's going to be returning to Tampa Bay to be their offensive coordinator, apparently on a hefty contract. This is from Adam Schefter, who says that Bucs offensive coordinator Liam Coen is taking himself out of the running for the Jags head coaching job to stay in Tampa on a new contract that will now place him amongst the highest paid coordinators in the NFL. Tampa Bay obviously incentivized to keep their OC. Baker Mayfield threw 41 touchdown passes this year with Liam Coen in charge. The Bucs averaged over 29 points per game. But from the 49ers perspective, this means that Robert Saleh and Patrick Graham are the two known candidates who have reached second-round interviews with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And second-round interview is a serious thing, especially if there are only two known candidates. If Robert Saleh does not get this job in Jacksonville, there's a good chance that the 49ers will be able to hire him right away to be their defensive coordinator. But if he is offered the Jacksonville head coaching job, then things become a whole lot more complicated. And Liam Coen had been considered the favorite for this job up until he took himself out of the running this morning. So my big question is, what will Robert Saleh do if he is offered the head coaching job by Jacksonville? Because we can read in between the lines with Liam Coen. He doesn't want to be a head coach somewhere where Trent Baalke is the general manager. Yes, Tampa Bay offered him more money, but they didn't offer him head coaching money. They made him one of the highest paid coordinators in the NFL. They didn't pay him like a head coach. Jacksonville probably would have paid Liam Coen like a head coach. But the Baalke effect is real. And when Robert Saleh showed up in 2017 with Kyle Shanahan to the 49ers, it was a dumpster fire that they had to fix. And I think that the main source of the dumpster fire was Trent Baalke. He was the general manager who would have been able to survive all those head coaches. Somehow he survived Jim Harbaugh in 2014, even though Jim Harbaugh obviously led the 49ers to a whole heck of a lot of success. Now Trent Baalke has survived Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. There are plenty of red flags that this is a coaching dead end. And Robert Saleh has already been in one toxic situation up in New York. So if Robert Saleh is offered by Jacksonville, and that could probably happen on Friday, and we also have to look at the Graham interview that's scheduled for Thursday. But if Robert Saleh is offered by Jacksonville, does he say yes? Or does he say conditionally yes, but only if Trent Baalke is gone? Because Trent Baalke has proven to be a toxic force in front offices. I think that it's very smart for any head coach these days to insist that the general manager comes in with him, and vice versa. I think it'd be very smart for any GM these days to insist that the head coach is hired in the same cycle with him. That's how the 49ers did things in 2017 when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch came aboard at the same time. And that's how teams, I think, are starting to do it in greater regularity around the league. But we still see too many examples of toxic situations created by the fact that the head coach and the GM don't come in at the same time. And there is probably no greater example of a toxic GM, at least the head coaching aspirations. The proof is in the pudding than Trent Baalke in Jacksonville. So what happens next is going to be fascinating because this is intertwining some past 49ers history with their potential future. Robert Saleh is their lead candidate to be the defensive coordinator, but that's only if he doesn't sign on to be a head coach elsewhere. And the leading candidate to be the Jacksonville Jags head coach has now withdrawn his name for consideration, and he's going back to Tampa Bay, which leaves Robert Saleh and Patrick Graham, who's the Raiders defensive coordinator, as the two remaining known public interviewees for this Jacksonville job. So we have more drama every single day, seems to bring more drama in this 49ers defensive coordinator chase. Waiting for Saleh, with the only other known interviews being Deshae Townsend, who is the DB coach of the Detroit Lions, and Brandon Staley, who's the assistant head coach of the 49ers. Staley was the defensive coordinator of the Rams in 2020, then the head coach of the Chargers from 2021 to 2023 before spending the past season on San Francisco's staff. Today, up on The Athletic, we've got Brockonomics. How about that photo illustration from, I said The Athletic, the San Francisco Standard, sorry. Up on the San Francisco Standard, we've got Brockonomics. You can go check it out up on the Standard. This is the link. It's up on the top. I think I actually have already sent it to Mike. But how the 49ers are set up for a rising salary cap and a pricey Purdy. Brock Purdy is not going to come cheap to the 49ers, nor should he come cheap to the 49ers. The market is the market, but the 49ers have done the work on the salary cap over the years. This has been a multi-year project. We're now in year 8 of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch taking over from Trent Baalke, but the 49ers have done the groundwork with the salary cap, and I explain all the machinations. I explained their cap strategy to have $35 million in effective cap space as we speak right now. That effective cap space means space with a 53-man roster already filled out. So how are they going to spend the rest of the money? Well, I think that Brock Purdy's deal is only going to cost about $15 million on the cap this season if the 49ers play it the way that they've played other mega deals, if they stagger the structure, as I've shown in the past. And we go through a lot of it in this piece. We could even go down to the very bottom where I believe I do have the staggered structure. Yes, there it is, $15 million cap hit. So these are Brockonomics. You can go check it out up on the Standard. Sign up. You could learn a lot about the 49ers cap situation. I'll do an entire dedicated video to this a little bit later in the day. But right now, I did want to focus on the morning update, which was Liam Coen turning down Jacksonville, which definitely makes things even more interesting as the 49ers do wait for Robert Saleh. So check out Brockonomics, and now post your questions this morning as we get ready to have a great Wednesday. The Jags have been denied twice already. Yes, that is true. Ben Johnson didn't want to deal with Jacksonville's situation. Everybody knows what Jacksonville's situation is. It involves Trent Baalke, the general manager, there's documented toxicity there with coaches. Baalke survives, coaches don't. So Ben Johnson didn't want to go to a situation where Baalke survives and coaches don't. Liam Coen obviously didn't want to go there either. Well, Robert Saleh, he hadn't been offered yet. But we do know that the Jags like Robert Saleh organizationally because before Baalke was there, Robert Saleh was the linebackers coach from 2014 to 2016. So apparently there are still some members in the front office, probably more related to ownership, who do like Robert Saleh. So there is a chance that regardless of what Trent Baalke says in the interview process, the chance that's overridden and Robert Saleh comes in as head coach. But even if Baalke is a lame duck general manager, even if he's just hanging on for one more year, even if that whole charade is running dry, I don't think that Robert Saleh wants to enter a place with a general manager who's going to be flipping after one season. He'd rather enter a place with a GM with whom he gets along. At least that would be my thinking based on the fact that Robert Saleh did not have a great time in New York and saw Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch build something with staying power in San Francisco. Remember, this is Saleh's second head coaching interview cycle. He had his first crack at it. He signed with the Jets back after the 2020 season. You normally don't get more than 2. If you fail in both of your first 2 head coaching opportunities, it's exceedingly rare. In fact, I can't even think of an example where you get a third one. So if you're Robert Saleh after New York went south, you better make sure that this Jacksonville opportunity, if it is offered to you, is a really good one. And the evidence right now, based on power structure in Jacksonville, just because Trent Baalke is in that building, the evidence is not promising that this is a very fruitful opportunity. And we've already seen Ben Johnson and now Liam Coen turn it down. As Mike said, Jets ownership was dysfunctional. Don't go to a team with bad ownership. And that's one thing about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch in 2017. The 49ers did not have a great reputation when it came to the entire organizational structure up to the ownership. I think that Jed York has really reestablished his reputation over the past few years, but it takes everybody. It takes a good coach, it takes a good general manager, and it takes the owner letting them do their jobs for this whole thing to come together. And now the 49ers do have the reputation as a positive destination for coaches and front office personnel alike. But it wasn't always that way, and it definitely wasn't that way when Trent Baalke was in the building. All right, let's pour in some of these questions this morning. Let's check out Brockonomics while you're at it. Link is in the description for you. Let's all have a great Wednesday. And let's answer Mike's question here. If Salah is hired by Jacksonville, what's the next step for the 49ers? Open interviews? It could be open interviews, or they could say that they want Brandon Staley to be their DC. And I don't think that's the most outrageous thing in the world. I know that a lot of social media thinks it's outrageous, but Staley has been a good defensive coordinator in the past. He's had his crack at it with the Rams in 2020, and they're the number one defense in all of football. They aren't interviewing him to be the head coach, and he's already been in the system for a year, so maybe they wouldn't even have to change fronts. Maybe he's at the position now where he can successfully assimilate with what the 49ers are running. That's the answer on the surface level. Deshae Townsend is also interviewed. Deshae Townsend would be younger blood into that DC spot, but Kyle Shanahan has said that he wants experience at that DC spot. And that's all I could really say. I mean, if he wants experience at the DC spot, he's probably not going to go to a second straight defensive coordinator who doesn't have play calling experience. Now, I will say that if we dig into 49ers history, hiring an inexperienced guy is not always a death sentence for your defense. In fact, Robert Saleh was not an experienced defensive coordinator yet in 2017. Neither was DeMeco Ryans in 2021. And back in 1983, the 49ers promoted George Seifert, who was their DB coach, and Deshae Townsend is a DB coach. The 49ers promoted Seifert to defensive coordinator. That obviously was Bill Walsh. There were concerns about that because Seifert had only been in NFL coaching for 2 years, in 81 and 82 as the DB coach. But he immediately turned a solid defense into a really, really good one, in the league's best in 1984. That 49ers defense helped pave the way to a Super Bowl. I mean, they had a super team in 1984. They went 15-1. But Seifert, it's funny because he ended up being the architect of a lot of what the 49ers are doing now. It all came back like a boomerang. George Seifert and the 4-3 that San Francisco ran in that 1980s dynastic run, that ended up influencing Pete Carroll, because Pete Carroll worked under George Seifert in 1995. Carroll took some stuff from Monty Kiffin. He was a quality control guy for Monty Kiffin way back in the day. I think he might have even been a graduate assistant at Arkansas under Monty Kiffin in the late 70s. Then Pete Carroll was the DC of the 49ers in 95. That was under George Seifert, who was this rapid promotion back in 1983 under Bill Walsh. And that defense ended up making its way back to the Seattle Seahawks when Pete Carroll was the coach there. And of course, that ended up trickling down through Robert Saleh to the 49ers. So good football is good football. Good coaching is good coaching, regardless of whether or not somebody has a ton of experience. But Kyle Shanahan has said that experience is what the 49ers might need at this critical juncture, so they can blitz at the right time, so they know the counters to these increasingly complex offenses in the National Football League. Being Butterfly loves learning football and 49ers history. Well, that's what I try to bring you on the channel. The Seifert thing is fascinating. I've got a book about Bill Walsh that I could literally read the graph about George Seifert and the concerns about promoting him in 1983 from DB coach to defensive coordinator, and it all worked out. But that's the case where it works out. Then there's the case of Nick Sorensen where it doesn't work out, right? So then you have the case of bringing in an outside coach where it works out. Mike Shanahan coming to the 49ers in 1992 with his new ideas, but you also have the case of bringing in the outside coach where it doesn't work out. Steve Wilkes, 2023. So you can find examples on both sides of the fence. The key is the situation, and the key is the person, the coach himself. And Kyle Shanahan, like it or not, has struck out on 2 straight defensive coordinator candidates. They've both been one and done, Steve Wilks and then Nick Sorensen. So this is one that he wants to get right. And Robert Saleh, I think, is a logical option to get it right. But then the question is Robert Saleh going to be available? And that is something that we can't answer in the affirmative at this point. We don't know at this point. And the chances of Robert Saleh being available probably go down a little bit with Liam Coen turning down Jacksonville, because Liam Coen had been rumored to be the leader for that job. Now, we don't know what Robert Saleh is going to do if he's offered by Jacksonville. 2 guys have already turned the Jags down. So there's a chance that Robert Saleh would turn them down as well. We just have to sit back and wait. His next interview is scheduled for Friday. Somebody asking if Gus Bradley is an option. I would think that Gus Bradley would be an option. Kyle Shanahan has expressed interest in Gus Bradley in the past. He hasn't formally interviewed. Maybe that's a backup plan. If they do open up the interviews, maybe they go there. I mean, you talk about the history, talk about Pete Carroll and the defense. The elephant was the Leo edge rusher. That's what they called him back on the 49ers. That was George Seifert passing it down to Pete Carroll in 1995. Then it was called the Leo, and then the 49ers adopted the wide 9. Anyway, Gus Bradley was Carroll's defensive coordinator in Seattle, his first DC in Seattle, 2009 to 2012, before Dan Quinn came in. Bradley then left to Jacksonville, and he took Robert Saleh to Jacksonville in 2014. So this all seems to connect with Jacksonville and all the moving pieces. Bradley recently fired as the defensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. He would bring experience to that 49ers unit. Now the question is, would he bring the experience that Kyle Shanahan wants and the adaptability that Kyle Shanahan wants? I keep on coming back to blitz rate, because Nick Sorensen, coming from that Seattle tree, didn't blitz hardly at all. Their blitz rate with 2 or more defenders was only 1.7% this past season. It was comically low. The 49ers weren't able to adjust and bring heat. You're not going to win rushing only 4 all the time in this league anymore. These offenses are way too complex, and they're based on all these complicated protections and answers. You have to derail the protections and the answers, and Sorensen wasn't able to do it. And that comes from a school of coaching that doesn't blitz a whole lot. Robert Saleh didn't blitz a whole lot with the 49ers either, but he showed the adaptability in 2020 that he could up the ante with blitzes a little bit after they lost Nick Bosa. And I think the Jets, where Saleh worked with Jeff Ulbrich, the former 49er, they upped their blitz rate to about median mark of the league, halfway up the rankings, and they saw a ton of success there. That was a top 5 defense when both Saleh and Ulbrich were around. So I think that he's grown as a coach to where he has the ability to be adaptable in the way Kyle Shanahan wants him to be. Does Gus Bradley have that ability? I haven't studied Gus as much over the last couple years. If and when he does interview with the 49ers, we can delve a little bit further into it. Right now, I'm waiting for this Robert Saleh situation to be resolved, since he does seem to be the 49ers' first choice. But I think that experience and adaptability are the 2 ingredients that Kyle Shanahan is looking for. Sean says, Robert Saleh is the 49ers' number 1 option. The 49ers are Saleh's number 4 option, it seems. Why even go after someone who doesn't want to come here? That you're comparing apples and oranges here, man. Saleh has 3 head coaching job openings that he's going after, and the 49ers situation is a coordinator opening. Of course, the guy is going to be more interested in head coaching openings, but then you have to start calculating, is he going to be offered by those head coaching openings? And then you have to start looking at the individual head coaching openings, and you have to ask the question that I asked a bit sooner or a bit earlier. What would he do if he were offered by one of those teams that has a known toxic general manager to coaches? So the 49ers are calculating these things as well. Plus, they have, I think, a little bit more information than us. They've actually talked to Robert Saleh. He's been their defensive coordinator for several seasons. So there is a relationship there. And maybe there's an understanding that it is likelier that he ends up with the 49ers than anywhere else. So I wouldn't say, oh, Salah clearly wants to be elsewhere. Sometimes in this league, it's about not burning bridges. And if you have head coaching interviews, you do them because you don't want to burn the bridges for later on down the road. You don't know when somebody is going to be in a position that is advantageous for you, is going to be in that position. They could be in Jacksonville or they could be in Las Vegas right now, but down the road, you don't want to offend anybody. You want to do your due diligence even as an interviewee. So this whole process, I think, is a little bit more complicated than a lot of people are letting on. This is a good question. Does it not seem risky to have gone for Salah? And if he succeeds in his lone year as OC and gets a head coaching job the following year, the 49ers are back at square one? Well, this is part of the price of success. Say that Robert Saleh signs with the 49ers, but then they have a really good kick-ass defense, and then they win the Super Bowl because they have a great defense paired with Brockonomics. Then Robert Saleh might get a head coaching job elsewhere, yes. But that's long been the price of success. Bill Walsh would always talk about the spirit of abundance. He would want to hire assistants, and he would want to develop assistants who would take promotions elsewhere. The league before had this insular view. It's too risky. We got to hide our guys. I mean, Paul Brown tried to hide Bill Walsh. Paul Brown didn't want Bill Walsh to leave. But then he was jealous of Bill Walsh when he left, and that created the whole Cincinnati-San Francisco rivalry. But it was a very short-sighted way of approaching staff building. Under Walsh in the 80s and then extending to the 90s, the 49ers saw this massive coaching tree develop. And yes, they would even see coaches come back and beat them with their own techniques. The best example was Mike Holmgren coming back with the Green Bay Packers, using everything, literally using a binder of insight that Bill Walsh had given him on his way out of the building. And that kind of stuff happened. But the mentality was, and I think the mentality ended up providing way more positive to the 49ers than negative, was that if you have a spirit of abundance and you go out and you hire the best coach possible, even if he might leave, you impart as much knowledge on your coaching staff, even if it might hurt you later. You develop everybody in the building. If you have that mentality, you are going to be the better football team. The rising tide will lift all boats, including yours. So instead of looking at this in terms of risk, look at this in terms of the opportunity. Yes, Salah would potentially leave after a year. But yes, Robert Saleh would also give you, I think, the best defense you can possibly have in the 2025 season. And this is about now in the NFL. You always try to be better now. And if you're always trying to be better now, then you'll be better in the long run in something that doesn't involve a salary cap. You'll be better year over year over year. When it comes to the cap, well, it's a little bit different. You got to be a little bit careful because there are limits, actual financial limits, which is why we did talk about Brockonomics. Shameless plug for the article. It is in the description. So go ahead and check it out. Casey Cook saying, I heard something about maybe Matt Eberflus. That would be another 4-3 specialist who is available. Dennis Allen, 4-3 specialist. Eberflus, 4-3. I mean, guys that have run schemes that not only resonate with what the 49ers are running now, and the front resonates with what the 49ers are running now, but also coaches who have impressed Kyle Shanahan in one way or the other before. In the case of Salah, he literally coached under Shanahan. But when we talked about Dennis Allen, his Saints defense had impressed Shanahan playing against the 49ers in 2022. When we talk about Eberflus, he was with the Colts and then the Bears. So in 21 and 22, he faced the 49ers. These are all coaches who seem to check the boxes that Kyle Shanahan listed out there at the end of season press conference. Yeah, Eberflus runs a cover 2 base defense. I mean, the 49ers have been mixing the coverages up on the back end, though. It's not just the standard cover 3 that they initially ran in the first couple years of Robert Saleh. They ran a lot of quarters in the 2019 Super Bowl run when they brought Joe Woods in as defensive backs coach. And I think the disguises really help the 49ers. Make sure to check out the piece on Brockonomics. It is up on the San Francisco Standard right now. Somebody says, steal Jim Schwartz from Cleveland. I don't know. I think he's still under contract in Cleveland. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think Robert Saleh is going to consider defensive coordinator anywhere else but San Francisco. I think it's either head coach somewhere else or defensive coordinator for the 49ers. I think that's the vibe. I don't know if we've gotten like hard reporting on that, but we've gotten chatter on that. We know he's interviewed with the 49ers. We know the 49ers haven't interviewed hardly anyone else. It's been Deshae Townsend and Brandon Staley, the other two guys on the list. So I think that's the way it's trending. And then we need to read the rest of the tea leaves. And the most relevant tea leaves right now are Jacksonville, Trent Baalke, the toxicity there, and Liam Coen withdrawing from consideration for the Jacksonville job this morning. Soul 684 says the NFL should let all coaches finish their contract before they can negotiate again. If teams want to interview that coach, they have to give that team a draft pick. Well, you have to finish your contract if you're moving laterally. So if it's defensive coordinator here to defensive coordinator there, you're not allowed to move. The team would have to trade for you. But if it's for a promotion and you want coaches to be able to climb up the ranks, so if it's from OC to head coach, then you can break the contract. That's just how it works. And I think that you do at some level have to set up rules that foster upward mobility. That gives people incentive to work hard. So I don't necessarily agree with that. Thank you, Rich. Yes, I'll be giving 49ers analysis through the offseason. I appreciate you. That's exactly what I'm doing now, right? It's January 22nd. The 49ers haven't played a game in a couple weeks because their season is over, and we're here probably deeper with our analysis than we were during the regular season. We've upped the ante with the channel. So thank you. I appreciate you, and everybody needs to hop on and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the San Francisco Standard if you haven't already. I mean, we are in depth with this stuff. This is an entire 1,500-word piece on 49ers cap situation and how they're managing it ahead of the big contract for Brock Purdy. And then look, you could read about Juwan Jennings getting unrightfully ejected against the Arizona Cardinals. That was the last time that the 49ers played. There's the piece on Purdy. I appreciate the nice words as we continue with this show in the morning. What do I think about Deommodore Lenoir posting that Maxx Crosby would look great in the 49ers uniform? I agree with Demo. Maxx Crosby would look great in the 49ers uniform. Does that make it realistic? Unfortunately not. Listen, Mark Davis has literally refused to trade with the 49ers in the past when it involved sending a star edge rusher to the 49ers, even though he had a better offer from the 49ers than he did from the team to whom he eventually ended up sending Khalil Mack to. In 2018, the 49ers offered, I think, a couple first-round picks, if I remember correctly, for Khalil Mack. And the Raiders said no. We'd rather trade him to the Bears. So they traded him to the Bears. The cost was less to Chicago than it was to San Francisco. So there you have it. I think that Mark Davis probably hasn't changed his stance on wanting to trade with the 49ers since then. Now, Maxx Crosby is still under contract for one more year. It's a lame duck year on his contract. If he wants out of Las Vegas, if he doesn't want to be part of the Raiders organization anymore, then he just needs to refuse to sign a contract. Then don't take any new deals. Theoretically, they can franchise tag him, but he can make life really hard on the Raiders, and he's a good enough player to where he can probably force his way out of that building. So Eventually, you'd probably see Maxx Crosby hit free agency. I don't know exactly how that would work, but we'll see when that would happen. And at that point, maybe the 49ers would be able to sign him, but that can't happen immediately since he's still under contract with the Raiders. Tom Brady is there now. That's true. So if Tom Brady can get into Mark Davis's ear and say, hey, my childhood team was the 49ers, trade Maxx Crosby to them, then that could happen. But Mark Davis is still running the show there, right? Mark Davis still has the majority of the shares with the Raiders. If he says, no, we're not trading with the 49ers, that's going to be the final word. So it would have to involve Tom Brady getting in his ear. Maybe the 49ers would offer so much compensation that it's a good deal for the Raiders, and Brady would be like, Mark, you're crazy for not doing this. But I just don't see it, because that's already essentially been the case once before without Tom Brady involved. He was still playing for the Patriots at the time, but Mark Davis said no. Why wouldn't the Jags seriously consider Steve Spagnuolo? Well, they wouldn't consider him for the reason that I mentioned earlier. You rarely see a coach get a third opportunity, head coaching opportunity. I think the reason that Spagnuolo works so well for the Kansas City Chiefs is because this is a very good defensive play caller who's already failed on the head coaching circuit and has decided that he's just going to be a defensive coordinator for the rest of his career. And he fits well there, and they have handsomely compensated him there, and he's winning Super Bowls there, and it's all good. So in the case of Spagnuolo, that's a DC lifer at this point. And in the case of Robert Saleh, there still is much more head coaching ambition left in the tank. But if Saleh swings and misses again at head coaching position, I think he could be placed in the same box as Steve Spagnuolo, where he's going to be a DC lifer instead. Any more questions? We're running up over half an hour here. That's good. Nice little morning show. I think this was a little morning surprise show for you. Normally I don't go live this early, but why not? We had news. We had to take care of the news. Interview news coming from the East Coast, where Liam Coen has turned down Jacksonville. He's going to stay with Tampa Bay. Good looking offense there in Tampa Bay this past year, over 29 points a game, 41 touchdown passes for Baker Mayfield. So Coen is going to stay with Tampa Bay. Jacksonville interviewing Patrick Graham tomorrow. Robert Saleh, second interview Friday. What will Robert Saleh do if he is offered the job by Jacksonville? It's a big question, because Trent Baalke is there, and Trent Baalke has proven toxic to head coaching careers as a general manager. I would proceed with great caution if I'm Robert Saleh. I would ask more interviews of Jacksonville than Jacksonville asks of you during that second round interview on Friday. And it's entirely possible that both Ben Johnson and Liam Coen told Jacksonville, we want we want Trent Baalke out of there if we're going to take that head coaching job. Now, in the case of Coen, sounds like there's a lot of money coming from Tampa Bay to keep him in Tampa Bay. But again, that's coordinator money. That is not head coach money. The highest paid coordinators, I don't think, make as much as the lowest paid head coaches. So the Baalke effect is demonstrably real. It has been over the years. And I think seeing two head coaching candidates turn down Jacksonville, say thanks, but no thanks, in Liam Coen and Ben Johnson, that speaks volumes about the situation that the Jags have on their hands with Trent Baalke in the building and his reputation. If Saleh's off the table and Staley isn't promoted, where are they likely to turn? Well, the only other person they've interviewed is Deshae Townsend. But they could still open up that interview process further. It's not like the candidates are totally dried up. They've still got somebody like Gus Bradley out there. So, well, I think we have to see. I think that this is an evolving, fluid situation if it reaches that point. Right now, Robert Saleh is the top choice for the 49ers. Here you go. There are 530 coaches in NFL history, and only 13 have coached 3 teams. Now, of those who have coached 3 teams, those 13, I would dare to say that none of them were losing coaches in their first 2 spots. I don't think you get a third head coaching opportunity if you're a failure at your first 2 spots. That's just me going out on a limb. If you can find an example of that happening, please go for it. But I really don't think that it's a thing. Why do you say that Robert Saleh is overrated as defensive coordinator? I think the 49ers performed pretty damn well with him there. You know, a lot of people will say, oh, they had a ton of talent in 2019. Well, fine. They did have a lot of talent in 2019. Joe Woods was a big part of that defense, coaching the DBs for San Francisco. But it was 2020 that impressed me most with Robert Saleh. And that's what got him the job with the Jets the following season. In 2020, everybody got hurt. They faced a situation that was even more dire injury-wise than this season, than 2024. And they finished with a top 6 defense. They were number 6 in 2020, even though Bosa was out for the year. So, I mean, they lost their top pass rushers that year. They were injured on the back end of that year. They were down to like 5th, 6th string cornerbacks that season. It was a bad year for injuries, and they still managed to finish number 6. Whereas this 2024 season, nobody's acting like it was good for injuries, but I don't think it was quite as bad as 2020. And they finished number 20. I think it was at best number 26. I'm losing the numbers in my head. It was number 26 to number 29. So you could see the difference. Sorensen had an injured team, and the defense fell off of a cliff. Salah had an injured team in 2020, a more injured team, I would say, and kept it in the top 6. If that doesn't show that he's a solid coordinator, I don't know what does. When he went to the Jets, they had a top 5 defense throughout essentially the entire time that he was there after they were able to build it up a little bit. So I don't understand this. Salah is overrated. I think that he's rated exactly where he should be. He's a really good defensive coordinator, really good defensive coach. Is he a great head coach? That remains to be seen. I think that the first go around with the Jets was toxic, wasn't great, but we will see. Jeremy Fowler tweets that with Liam Coen off the board, Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady is a name to watch if the Jags expand their search to next week. He was on the team's initial list of offensive minds by which Jacksonville was intrigued. Well, the thing about Joe Brady is that they haven't been able to give him an interview here over the past week because he hadn't been on a bye week, right? So the Bills didn't have the number 1 seed. I think that once we get to the Super Bowl week, there's going to be a bye, which would open up coaching interview possibilities. I don't know exactly how those rules work, but I've long said that offensive head coach makes a lot more sense than defensive head coach. 7 of the last 8 Super Bowl winners have been offensive head coaches, with the 8th being Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick isn't walking through that door right now. So Jeremy Fowler's reporting it, and I think that it's a definite possibility, and I think that the interviewing rules are going to be a lot more fluid after this week, since there is a bye week coming up. Yeah, and then Mike tells me Crosby doesn't have any more guarantees on his contract. He doesn't, and he will want a new contract, but he is under contract with the Raiders. If you're under contract with the Raiders and Mark Davis doesn't want to trade you to the 49ers, well, that ends those discussions. Will I be doing a video about possible extensions and cap implications like Kittle and Warner impact on cap space? Yes, that video is going to be coming later today. It's going to be part of this article, which just came out on the San Francisco Standard. Talk about Brockonomics, how the 49ers are setting up for a rising salary cap, and a pricey Brock Purdy. And then look, I could search for George Kittle's name in this article. Oops, don't want to do that. I want to search for Kittle right here. Read this. Kittle will also likely make a second appearance this offseason since he's entering the lame duck year of the deal signed in 2020. The 49ers can actually lower Kittle's 2025 salary cap hit of over $25 million through an extension that spreads hits into the future via signing bonus. So, yes, a Kittle extension can happen this offseason. You could open up room to pay this guy. Check out the link. It is in the description. Go sign up for the San Francisco Standard. Article will be talked about in a video a little bit later. Everybody, thanks for watching. This was a good little morning show. I appreciate all you guys. Nathan asks, if you were the Jags owner, who's your GM head coach? Well, it's not going to be Trent Baalke, that's for sure. You can't take them seriously as long as Trent Baalke is still there surviving coaches. So I would start totally anew. That would be very important to me if I were Shad Khan, the Jags owner. And then there's a question, do you think Tyreek Hill will be playing for the 49ers? No, I do not see that happening. Thanks to everybody for your questions today. It was a fun one. It was a cool show. Liam Coen turns down the Jags. Robert Saleh drama continues. We'll talk to you all soon.